Anyone who knows what I do for a living and seen any films that I've been in, they know that, I turn up and get stuck in. I roll up the sleeves and I do what I'm capable of, which is quite a lot.
Jason Statham's story doesn't begin in Hollywood, under bright lights, or on a polished film set surrounded by million-dollar equipment. It begins in the cold, hard, unforgiving heart of Shirebrook, a mining town where survival wasn't a dream, it was a requirement. Born in 1967, Jason entered a world shaped by coal dust, harsh winters, and a family that worked harder than life ever paid them back. His father, Barry Statham, was a man carved by necessity. He wasn't one thing, he was everything: painter, coal miner, street vendor, lounge singer, driver, hustler, and whatever else to the weak demanded. His mother, Eileen, danced in dim pubs where the lights flickered and the crowds were loud but the pay was small. They didn't have stability, but they had movement, constant, relentless movement. Their home wasn't the kind of place where dreams were spoken, it was the kind of place where you fought to make tomorrow happen. But even in that chaos, something unique formed. Music drifted through their nights, survival echoed through their days, and little Jason watched the world of grit clash with the world of performance inside four cramped walls. That contrast, hardship and art, struggle and performance, would one day build the man Hollywood couldn't control. At 10 years old, his life shifted when the family moved to Great Yarmouth, a seaside town with carnival lights, arcades, and the kind of markets where hustling wasn't betrayal, it was business. Here, Barry taught Jason the small, sharp skills of survival: how to negotiate, how to read people, how to stay alert, how to sell things nobody actually needed but everyone could be convinced to want. But while Barry embraced the hustle, Jason resisted it. He didn't want to be a street seller forever. He wanted discipline. He wanted mastery. He wanted control in a life that had offered him none. So he turned to martial arts. Karate, kickboxing, Muay Thai, Judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, anything that required precision, focus, and pain. Martial arts didn't just train his body, they trained his mind. They taught him how to breathe when he was breaking, how to push when he wanted to quit, how to rely on nobody but himself. Football sharpened his teamwork, but diving became his first true identity. The discipline of it, the repetition, the demand for perfection. He spent years leaping off boards, twisting through the air, slicing into cold water like a blade. By the 1990 Commonwealth Games, Jason Statham wasn't just an athlete, he was a competitor forged through 10,000 hours of silence, concentration, and sacrifice, but all the discipline in the world doesn't pay bills. After years of training, Jason found himself doing what he once resisted: modeling to survive. Tommy Hilfiger, Levi's, French Connection, big names that paid small checks. He posed for cameras by day and sold fake jewelry on London streets by night. The irony wasn't lost on him: how the boy who hated hustling had returned to it. London hardened him in a different way. The streets weren't cold, they were sharp, cunning, unpredictable. He sold knockoff watches to businessmen who thought they were clever and to tourists who didn't know better. That job trained him as much as martial arts ever had. It taught him confidence, presence, adaptability. And those traits were what changed everything in 1997. Guy Ritchie wasn't looking for an actor, he was looking for authenticity. Someone who knew the streets, who lived the life, who carried danger in his eyes and resilience in his posture. When he saw Jason, he knew instantly, this wasn't a performer, this was a character, a story, a fire waiting to be filmed. Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels didn't just cast Jason, it revealed him. Suddenly, the man who had been ignored, broke, and unknown was the most magnetic force in British cinema. His rawness, his reality, his edge, it wasn't invented for the role. It was his life. And audiences felt it. The breakout performance in Lock, Stock didn't just impress audiences, it detonated across the British film scene. It was raw, chaotic, magnetic, and painfully real. Critics praised him for bringing an unpredictable energy to the screen, a kind of electricity that felt dangerous because it was dangerous. Directors noticed the way he moved, the way he held tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes carried stories no script could fully capture. And Guy Ritchie, already convinced he had found something rare, doubled down with Snatch, giving Jason space to sharpen that raw edge into something even sharper. In those films, Jason wasn't acting. There was no mask, no persona, no crafted Hollywood image. He was unleashing everything he had carried since childhood, the instability of Shirebrook, the cold mornings in Great Yarmouth, the humiliation of hustling cheap goods on the streets, the discipline carved into him through diving, martial arts, and years of survival disguised as ambition. Every look, every gesture, every clipped line of dialogue carried decades of bottled struggle, grit, and authenticity that simply couldn't be manufactured. Hollywood hadn't seen anything like him. At the time, the industry was filled with polished actors, men with perfect teeth, perfect hair, carefully shaped public images, and spotless resumes. Jason was none of those things. He was unpolished, unfiltered, unpredictable. He brought danger to the screen without needing to fake it. When he entered a scene, audiences didn't feel like they were watching a character, they felt like the character might walk off the screen and into real life, and that's what made him valuable. Casting directors whispered about him. Producers circled his name. Executives watched him with interest because they sensed what he represented, a new breed of actor, one who didn't need the superhero costume or the high-tech weapons or the theatrical monologue to look intimidating. Jason had a presence that made people lean forward slightly, unsure if they should trust him or fear him. And that presence was built on a lifetime of fighting for every inch, but hidden beneath the rise was something darker. Because the same things that made him magnetic were the same things carving a dangerous path beneath his feet. Jason didn't believe in limits. He never had. Limits were for people who had safety nets, who grew up with comfort, who had the luxury of falling and knowing someone would catch them. Jason never had that. He learned early that if he didn't push harder than everyone else, he would be swallowed by the life he came from. Slowing down felt like slipping backward. Taking it easy felt like weakness. Letting someone else handle the dangerous parts felt like admitting that he wasn't strong enough. And Jason Statham had spent too many years building himself into a weapon to suddenly become soft. Every job, every stunt, every opportunity was another chance to prove, to himself, to the world, to the ghosts of his childhood, that he could not be broken. So when Hollywood handed him action roles demanding bruises, burns, and blood, he didn't flinch. He didn't ask questions. He didn't negotiate. He just nodded and stepped forward, ready to throw himself across concrete or through windows because that's what he believed greatness required, but beneath the adrenaline was a truth he never acknowledged: a body, even one as disciplined as his, wasn't built for constant war. Pain began visiting him quietly at first: morning stiffness, flashes of soreness, aches he shrugged off. And because he refused to stop, pain stopped whispering, and began preparing to strike louder, deeper, and permanently. When action roles came, they came hard and fast. And Jason accepted them with the same stubborn fire that had carried him through every hardship. If a director said a stunt was optional, Jason heard, "Prove yourself." If someone offered him a double, he heard, "You can't do it." If a script called for danger, he performed it like a man who didn't know fear, because he didn't. Not then. When Hollywood saw him, they didn't see a star, they saw a weapon. The Transporter series arrived like a storm, and Jason embraced it. He trained harder than any director asked. He pushed himself further than the industry required. He fought with precision, drove with recklessness, leapt from moving cars, tumbled through glass, and took hits that would leave stuntmen concussed. Crank pushed his limits. Death Race tested his endurance. The Mechanic sharpened his composure. The Expendables unlocked his intensity. Fast and Furious cemented his global status. But each film demanded something brutal. Something taxing. Something dangerous. While other actors stepped aside for doubles, Jason refused. He saw doubles as shortcuts. He saw pain as part of the craft. He believed the audience deserved the truth, not illusion. But the truth nearly killed him repeatedly. There was the truck accident during The Expendables where the vehicle plunged into the Black Sea. Jason, trapped inside, sank fast. Most people panic underwater, he didn't. Years of diving saved him. He escaped through the truck window and swam to the surface. Not a stunt, real survival. Another time, a sword sliced his leg. Another time, an explosion pushed him into a wall so hard it fractured his ribs. He endured concussions, burns, cuts, fractures, torn muscles, and stunts that went wrong in silence because Hollywood doesn't report what doesn't sell. He walked off set bleeding, bruised, limping, or dizzy, but he always returned the next day. To directors, he was perfection. To producers, he was a miracle. To stunt coordinators, he was a headache. To himself, he was unstoppable. But the body keeps score. By 2025, that score finally surfaced. Medical reports leaked, injuries Hollywood had hidden, pain Jason had ignored, warnings his doctors had repeated for years. A wrist fracture that never healed. A spine compression that caused nerve pain. Scar tissue in his knee thick enough to alarm specialists, repeated concussions that increased long-term risk. But the most shocking part wasn't the injuries, it was the frequency, dozens of fractures, countless bruises, multiple near-death incidents. His wife, Rosie Huntington Whiteley, who stayed quiet for years, reached her breaking point. When she saw the medical scans, she wasn't angry, she was terrified. She begged him to use doubles, begged him to slow down, begged him to understand that no film was worth losing him. But Jason wasn't fighting a studio anymore, he was fighting himself. Because the truth is, he didn't do stunts to impress Hollywood. He did them to outrun the kid who grew up with nothing. The hustler. The struggler. The boy who thought quitting meant defeat. Hollywood didn't help. Studios loved his obsession. They marketed his stunts like circus acts. Jason Statham does 95% of his own stunts. Jason Statham performs the most dangerous scenes himself. Fans loved it. Producers profited from it. And the pressure grew. The more he risked, the more they demanded. The more he delivered, the harder they pushed. He became a machine built on adrenaline and expectation. And slowly, he broke. He just didn't admit it. Every scar became part of his legend. Every injury became another story. Every brush with death became a selling point. Until it wasn't. Until the danger stopped being cinematic and became real, the injuries leaked in 2025 exposed a hidden war beneath the spotlight. A war Jason waged silently for decades. The public saw a hero who laughed in the face of danger. The man who stood on top of moving cars, who dove from helicopters, who punched his way through windows and flames without blinking. But behind the scenes, away from the cameras, the red carpets, and the billion-dollar franchises, a different picture existed. A picture only a handful of doctors, trainers, and family members truly understood, because while fans saw fearlessness, doctors saw damage. They saw the X-rays of a spine that had absorbed more punishment than some professional fighters take in a lifetime. They saw ribs that had healed unevenly, bones that had fused imperfectly, ligaments stretched to their limit, and a wrist fracture that never healed because he kept working through the pain. They saw scar tissue laced through his knees like spiderwebs. They saw neurological patterns that hinted at the long shadow of repeated concussions he shrugged off as just another day on set. For years, physicians had warned him quietly, cautiously, almost respectfully. One wrong fall could end your mobility. One more concussion could alter your memory. Your bones won't heal like they used to. But Jason Statham was Jason Statham, built on grit, raised on hardship, trained by discipline, fueled by pride. Pain wasn't a warning sign to him, it was a familiar companion. And danger wasn't a deterrent, it was the cost of authenticity. So he ignored the warnings. Smiled through them. Hid injuries beneath long sleeves, taped ribs under costumes, iced bruises in trailers, stitched small cuts himself just to avoid delays. Directors praised his commitment. Producers bragged about it in interviews. Studios wrote it into marketing campaigns like it was a superpower. But superpowers don't break. Humans do, and by 2025, his body wasn't whispering anymore. It was screaming. During one medical consultation, doctors placed his X-rays side by side from the last 20 years. The difference was brutal. His skeleton told a story of relentless wear, trauma, and decline. But the breaking point wasn't the pain. It wasn't the doctor's tone. It wasn't the fear of what might happen that it was rosy. For the first time in his career, Jason saw fear not in his own reflection, but in someone else's eyes. His wife wasn't afraid of stunts or explosions or broken bones. She was afraid of losing him. Afraid of the day he walked onto a set and didn't walk back off. Afraid their children would grow up watching their father deteriorate, not from age, but from choices he refused to abandon. That fear hit him harder than any punch, any fall, any crash. Because suddenly the danger wasn't cinematic anymore, it was personal. He had always believed he could handle anything. That he could push through anything. That toughness was the answer to every problem. But now the toughest choice he faced wasn't another fight scene, another leap, another near-death stunt. It was choosing to stay alive long enough to enjoy the life he built, and that terrified him more than any stunt ever could. And yet, despite the pain, the injuries, and the risk, Jason's legacy wasn't built on danger alone. It was built on preparation disguised as hardship finally meeting opportunity. From lock, stock to snatch, from transporter to fast and furious, every role was a culmination of every struggle he had survived long before Hollywood knew his name. That's why audiences connect with him, not because he's an action star, but because he's real. Every punch he throws carries the weight of his past. Every fight he films echoes the fights he lived. Every performance is a tribute to the boy who refused to quit. In the end, the greatest stunt Jason Statham may ever pull, is learning how to survive without risking everything.